The alert came at noon, though calling it an alert was generous. It was more like a suggestion, a mild chime on the perimeter grid, buried beneath 6 maintenance notifications and a weather forecast that somehow included mild chance of electromagnetic fog. Jackson Reed didn't even notice it at first. He was too busy arguing with the water purifier again. "Don't you start blinking red on me, you glorified Brita," he muttered, elbow deep in a panel that smelled vaguely of ozone and regret. "We had a deal. Clean water, no drama." The purifier predictably blinked red. So he was already in a foul mood when the perimeter gate opened, with a sound that was way too casual for a planetary breach. The gate hissed, creaked, and then something stepped through. Not stomped, not hovered. Just stepped, like she was late for a meeting and not trespassing on a level 3 restricted human expansion zone. She wore armor, sleek and silver-edged, the kind that looked ceremonial but had definitely been field-tested. Her skin was pale, not just pale but luminous, with a faint blue cast like moonlight on metal. Long ears, pointed and elegant, twitched slightly as if filtering the frequency of everyone's panicked thoughts. And her hair, golden, braided, and impossibly neat for someone walking across dust fields, shone like it hadn't met a speck of dirt in its life. The 2 guards at the post, rookies, bless them, froze like statues. One of them tried to raise his weapon and only succeeded in smacking himself in the chin with the stock. She looked at him like he was a toddler trying to eat a neutron grenade. Jackson, still smeared with carbon sludge and holding a dripping filter cartridge, squinted. "Are you here for the maintenance rotation?" Her head tilted slightly, not in confusion, more like disbelief. She took 2 steps closer. The guards backed up, bumping into each other like badly programmed NPCs. Jackson stayed where he was, casually flicking goop off the cartridge. "I am not," she said, voice cool and clipped, with an accent that hinted at languages layered over centuries. "Who are you?" "Jackson Reed," he replied cheerfully. "Engineer, part-time insult collector, full-time savior of aquatic infrastructure. You?" Her eyes narrowed, calculating. "You do not fear me. Well, you're not the water purifier, so you've already got points in your favor." He tossed the cartridge into a bin with a splash and wiped his hands on a rag that probably violated at least 3 sanitation codes. "Look, if you're here to conquer, just do it after lunch. We're having synthes soup, supposedly chicken." Behind him, one of the guards choked on his own breath. The other looked like he might cry. She took another step forward. The air shifted, not hot, not cold, just different, denser, charged. Jackson felt it in his teeth. "You do not understand what I am," she said. He shrugged. "I barely understand my own tax forms." Her expression didn't change, but something in her stance eased. Microscopic, but there. A fraction of a breath, less tension. "My name is Alaris," she said. "You may have heard of me." Jackson scratched his cheek. "Alaris. Alaris. Oh, right. You're the one who turned that orbital fleet into confetti above Arlen 3. Big party. Sparkly bits everywhere. That was a battle." "Sure, but you've got to admit, it had a certain New Year's vibe." She stared at him like she was trying to determine if his skull was decorative. "You are mocking me." "A little," he admitted, but respectfully. Behind them, the guards were slowly inching away. Jackson gave them a thumbs up without looking. "You are supposed to be afraid," she said. A trace of something. Was that frustration in her voice now? "I was built to be feared." "Well," Jackson said, grabbing his tool case, "they built the purifier to be reliable, and it still leaks into my socks. So maybe builders aren't the gold standard." She didn't move as he walked past her, headed toward the habitat dome. After a few seconds, she turned and followed. "You're not going to vaporize me, are you?" he asked over his shoulder. "No." "Then I suggest you keep up. I'm on a tight schedule of sarcasm and circuitry." As they reached the dome, a small maintenance drone zipped by, beeped at Alaris, then spun in a confused circle and shorted out midair. Jackson sighed. "That's Jerry. Don't take it personally. He panics around competent people." Alaris looked around as the airlock hissed open. Inside, the corridor was narrow and cluttered. plastered with warning signs that had clearly lost all meaning. Caution, toxic fumes was stuck on the coffee machine. Jackson led her to the central hub, which doubled as his workshop and tripled as the break room. A kettle whistled gently in the corner. Tea, he offered. She blinked. You are offering me tea? Well, it's technically algae derivative, but we pretend it's tea. He poured 2 cups, handed her one. She sniffed it, suspicious. Is this a test? Nope. If it glows, we throw it out. She sipped, paused. It does not glow. Success, Jackson said, raising his cup. To not glowing beverages and moderately non-fatal hospitality. She looked at him over the rim of her cup. Why are you not afraid? He tilted his head, considering. I guess you're not what I expected. And what did you expect? Flaming eyes, maybe. Immediate incineration. Possibly a dramatic monologue. Ilaris snorted. It was brief, involuntary, and quickly smothered. But it was there. You are strange. And you're not as scary when you're drinking moss juice out of a tin mug. She set her cup down. They say I am a monster. He leaned against the counter. They also say the coffee here is safe. People say a lot of things. She stood, armor clinking softly. You are either foolish or very brave. Jackson smiled. Or maybe I'm just really bad at reading warning labels. Ilaris turned toward the exit. I will stay for now. He nodded. Great. You break it, you fix it. She paused at the door. You assume I will break something? Statistically likely, he said, but I'm optimistic. As she stepped out into the corridor, he called after her. Hey, do you like potatoes? A pause, then, they are acceptable. Good, he said. You're on root vegetable rotation tomorrow. Ilaris stared at the potato with something between suspicion and philosophical distress. It sat in her gloved hand like an object of cosmic mockery, dusty and perfectly mundane. Across the table, Jackson shoveled diced tubers into a sizzling pan, humming off-key to a song that only he seemed to know. The kitchen smelled like oil, thyme, and mild desperation. This, she said, holding the potato higher, as if it might explain itself, is not a vegetable. It is a geological formation. It's versatile, Jackson replied, tossing in another handful of chopped onions. Mashed, fried, baked, weaponized. I once used one to jam a hostile drone's rotor. Exploded like a starch grenade. She lowered the potato slowly. Your species uses food as munitions? Only when absolutely necessary, he said. Or when we're bored. She watched as he stirred the mix with unearned confidence. Your technique is aggressive. Culinary bravery. Look it up. She didn't. Instead, she poked the potato, then placed it delicately on the counter as if it might detonate. Jackson, to his credit, didn't laugh. Much. The smell of the cooking filled the small room until it almost covered the faint scent of ozone from the malfunctioning power regulator. Almost. They ate in silence, which in Jackson's company was more like a quiet intermission than actual stillness. Ilaris watched him more than she watched the food. He ate with the determined focus of someone who tasted too many rations and found actual cooking to be a sacred act. She tried a bite, chewed thoughtfully, then said, Your seasoning is unbalanced. Unbalanced is where the magic happens. Magic should not taste this earthy. That's the charm of root vegetables. They remind you of where you came from, or where you're headed if the reactor core goes critical. Her gaze shifted slightly. Does it go critical often? He shrugged. Only on days ending in Y. They moved through the day like a bizarre duet, Jackson patching up wiring systems with the enthusiasm of a caffeine-fueled goblin. Ilaris watching silently, sometimes correcting him with a single arched brow that made him mutter under his breath. She helped him recalibrate the solar buffer array, though she had to disable the voice prompts because they kept referring to her as unauthorized entity, threat classification Alpha 9. She tore out the audio unit with surgical precision. Your machines are melodramatic. They learn from us. Later, while Jackson tried to realign the satellite uplink dish by smacking it with a wrench and shouting inspirational slogans, Ilaris ran diagnostics on the dome's shielding. She frowned at the results, then frowned harder at the frown, as if annoyed it had happened without her consent. Your defense matrix is outdated, she said. I know. The parts for the upgrade got rerouted to Sector 12. Something about budget restrictions and a sudden infestation of carnivorous moss. She turned to him. Moss? Very bitey, surprisingly political. Elleris blinked slowly. And yet your fear remains reserved for the coffee machine. That thing growls at night. She tilted her head. Growls? Like a small angry bear with digestive issues. They walked the perimeter after that, boots crunching on gravel, distant stars flickering like half-forgotten gods overhead. The night was sharp, clean, and too quiet for Jackson's taste, so he filled it with commentary about constellations that didn't exist and theories about why the dome's north side always smelled faintly of cinnamon. Alaris said nothing for a long time, then asked, Do all humans fill silence with absurdities? Only the interesting ones. She glanced sideways. Then I've met very few interesting ones. Now that's just mean, he said, pretending to be wounded. I'm a delight, a solar-powered ray of entertainment. You're a malfunctioning AI in organic form. Flatterer. They stopped at the edge of the field where the automated seeders were supposed to be working. Two of them had apparently given up on farming and were now doing a slow, awkward dance with their mechanical arms in the air. Jackson sighed. That's the third time this week. They keep downloading dance tutorials instead of firmware updates. Alaris raised an eyebrow. This is what your machines evolve into? It's art. It's flailing. Art is subjective. She overrode their programming with a single gesture, fingers skimming the control panel like a pianist playing a dirge. The machines froze, then realigned into neat, obedient rows. Jackson clapped once, slow and theatrical. Teach me your ways, O wise reprogrammer of discobots. She ignored him, but her mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. By the time they returned to the dome, the interior lighting had shifted to its softer evening hue. Jackson flopped onto a chair in the common room and propped his feet on the table. Alaris remained standing, arms crossed, gaze locked on something distant through the window. A storm forming on the horizon, luminous and pale, crawling like a living bruise across the dark. He noticed her quiet. Not the usual controlled silence, but a deeper stillness. You all right? She didn't answer immediately. Then, storms like that do not exist on my world. What are your storms like? They don't give warnings. They simply begin and end. Efficient, merciless. He sat up. That's not the same thing. She looked at him then, eyes colder than usual. You see me as a guest, a curiosity, but you don't understand what I've done, what I am. He held her gaze. You keep saying that like it'll scare me eventually. It should. Why? Because you've done things I wouldn't approve of? I've microwaved tuna in a shared kitchen. I know guilt. This isn't a joke. Neither was the tuna. She turned away sharply, but he caught the edge of her expression. Something fraying, raw. Regret maybe, or exhaustion, maybe both. Alaris, he said, quieter now. You're here. You're helping. That counts for something. She didn't answer, but she didn't leave the room either. The storm rolled closer, casting strange shadows across the dome's surface. The silence stretched, and this time he didn't try to fill it. Not yet. Then she said, almost too softly, Why do you speak to me like I'm just a person? He thought about it. Because I think maybe you want to be. She looked at him. For a second, just a second, all the armor and legend and terrible weight of her name seemed to fade. And then she said, The potato was undercooked. He smiled. You should have seen the meatloaf. Jackson discovered the note stuck to the coffee machine before sunrise. It was written in blocky, careful penmanship with no punctuation, and read, Stop speaking to me, I am trying to sleep. He stared at it while sipping something that may or may not have originally been coffee. The machine gurgled a low protest, like a beast resenting the act of being milked. Elleris entered the room precisely 23 seconds later, hair damp from a sonic rinse, wearing a shirt she had clearly borrowed from his laundry pile. It was leaking sound pulses again, she said before he could ask. I traced the source to your attempts at morning conversation. I was being polite. You were singing. It was a gentle hum. It woke the greenhouse. He raised his mug. I'm sure the tomatoes appreciated the serenade. They attempted to climb the walls. They're passionate. She moved to the console, swiping through a stream of data from the outer perimeter sensors. Her brow furrowed slightly. The storm changed trajectory. It's moving back this way. Jackson leaned in, ignoring the machine's spiteful hiss. Back? That's not how wind works. This isn't wind. It's something else. The ion trail is braided. Braided like a cosmic braid or like a hair braid? She looked at him. What is the difference? One is an adorable hairstyle. The other is a cosmic red flag. She ignored that and brought up a spectral overlay. The swirls of energy on the screen pulsed in eerie rhythm, like something breathing in slow, deliberate waves. Jackson's usual smart remarks died in his throat. That's not a normal storm, is it? No. And we're not evacuating because? Because the evacuation beacon you installed 3 months ago is currently functioning as a coat rack. He blinked. I had nowhere else to hang my socks. She didn't reply. She just kept tapping through readings, the screen flickering as the storm crept closer. Jackson stood beside her in the soft glow of the monitors, half expecting something monstrous to step out of the digital static. Are you worried? He asked quietly. She didn't look up. I don't worry. I calculate. And what do your calculations say? That we have approximately 14 hours before the storm breaches the outer shield. Perhaps less, depending on whether the generator decides to spontaneously combust. Again? Again. Should I prepare snacks? Yes. High protein. Possibly throwable. They spent the next few hours in a flurry of mildly controlled chaos. Jackson argued with the ventilation system about its temperature preferences, while Alaris upgraded the shielding code in a language that looked like a hybrid of mathematics and ancient curses. They found a nest of self-replicating cleaning bots trying to unionize behind the cargo lockers. Alaris dissolved them with a glance. I am starting to understand why you are considered a terrifying myth, Jackson said as she recompiled the dome's magnetic grid with one hand. It is not myth, it is history. Still, if I had a medal for every time you saved us, I'd have two. You'd have 2 medals. And a very short ceremony. She smiled slightly. Not the full thing, just the corner. By midday, the storm reached visual range. Low violet tendrils licking at the sky like alien ink. Jackson watched it from the roof hatch while chewing a protein bar that claimed to taste like galactic berry, but mostly tasted like regret. Alaris joined him, silent for a long moment. You shouldn't be up here. Why? The electromagnetic field is already disrupting thought clarity. Oh, that explains why I was about to ask if clouds had feelings. They do, but they are unkind. They stood there together, watching as the sky turned unnatural colors. The air began to shimmer with static. Alaris closed her eyes. Her ears twitched once. Subtle, but there. And Jackson knew something was shifting beneath her surface. Does this remind you of home? He asked. She was quiet a moment. Yes, but not the good parts. He looked at her profile, sharp, luminous, alien, and yet somehow familiar. You don't talk much about it. There's little to say that doesn't sound like warning. I don't mind warnings, I collect them. This one is old, she said, voice softer than the wind. My kind was shaped by storms like these. The atmospheric anomalies aren't just weather, they're alive. Thought echoes from a war too vast to name. Our ancestors harvested them, used them, became them. And you? I walked away. He nodded slowly. You do that a lot. Do what? Walk away from things. Except me. You stayed. That was an error in judgment. He smiled. You keep making it. I keep recalculating. The storm howled above them now, the energy pressing down like invisible pressure. They returned to the control center where the generators buzzed like angry bees with god complexes. The shield walls groaned. Alaris input something into the control panel that made the entire station flicker. Jackson watched her fingers move. Delicate, exact, deadly. You've done this before. Twice. How'd it go? The first time, I saved a continent. The second time, I sank a moon. 50-50 odds then. Those are better than usual. He reached for a loose wire, then thought better of it. Tell me something personal, something real, before the sky tries to kill us. She didn't answer right away. Then, my real name is an Alaris. He blinked. What is it? You cannot pronounce it. Try me. She made a sound. It was like wind through broken glass, mixed with whale song and static. He stared. Okay, yes, that was more of an audio experience than a name. She looked faintly pleased. It means one who endures the unmaking. He whistled. And I thought Jackson was dramatic. The dome shuddered. Lights dimmed. Alarms pulsed red. Ellery stood tall, eyes narrowing, body aligned like a blade waiting to strike. Jackson flipped switches that probably didn't need flipping, more for emotional support than utility. Then the storm hit. It hit like memory, like grief with claws. The walls screamed with energy. The sky outside vanished. Inside, the systems flickered in and out like they couldn't decide what reality to stick with. Jackson tried to anchor himself with a joke, but the air had weight now. Seriousness crawled in. Alaris moved through it like she was born of it. She placed her hand on the console. Her skin lit up, blue, then gold, then something older, something deeper. The storm responded, or resisted, or both. Jackson shouted, "What are you doing?" She said, calm as ever, "What I was made for." And the storm screamed louder. Jackson wasn't entirely sure if he was alive. There was a moment, just a second, where he thought he had become a memory, or maybe a light fixture. Everything had gone white, then black, then white again. The universe had performed a blinking contest, and Jackson lost. When his eyes finally registered shapes, he was lying on the floor of the control room, clutching a mug with no bottom and staring up at the flickering ceiling like it owed him rent. Alaris stood in the center of it all, unharmed, unshaken, radiating the kind of calm usually reserved for statues or mildly judgmental librarians. Her hands still glowed faintly. The console beneath them was cracked, sizzling, but no longer possessed by the storm's rage. The storm itself had dimmed. It didn't retreat so much as it had been told, very politely and very firmly, to leave. "You good?" Jackson croaked from the floor. "I am operational," she replied. He sat up slowly, checking for missing limbs or new ones. "Define operational." "My systems are functional. The dome is holding. You are conscious." "That last one is debatable." She offered him a hand. He accepted it, more because he didn't trust his legs than anything else. "Did we win?" he asked. There was no victory, only containment. Wow. Way to take the joy out of surviving a cataclysm. The storm was not an enemy, it was a remnant. A ghost. He blinked. We just got haunted by weather? It remembered what it used to be, and it didn't like being forgotten. Well, that's relatable. Alaris stepped over to a side panel and began recalibrating the shield harmonics. Jackson wandered behind her like a stray electron, touching things that buzzed with warning and pretending he knew what any of them meant. "You were glowing," he said after a beat, "like a small supernova. That normal for you?" She didn't turn. "It is. Part of what I was built for." "You say that a lot. Built. You weren't born?" "I was constructed." He frowned. "Like a machine?" "Number. Like a storm. That is both terrifying and oddly poetic. It is inconvenient." She finally turned to him. Her ears were still faintly luminous, the tips pulsing with residual energy. Her eyes shimmered like deep water, alien, endless, but with something softer now, something almost human. He said, "I'm guessing most people don't stick around long enough to see this version of you." Number most run or kneel. You hate that, don't you? She hesitated. "I do not understand reverence or fear. Both are cages. And me? You are a feral noise that refuses to obey protocol." He grinned. "So, your favorite." She almost smiled again. Almost. Then she said, "I need to rest. The integration with the storm drained more than I anticipated. Do you sleep in the conventional way or just stare at walls until your systems reboot?" "I dream." Jackson blinked. "Really?" "Yes." "What about?" "Mostly equations. Sometimes fire." He scratched his head. Mine usually involve flying or forgetting to wear pants at meetings. That explains much. She retreated to her chamber, more of a meditation chamber than a bedroom, really. Jackson busied himself with trying to repair the snack dispenser, which had decided now was the right time to begin speaking fluent binary. When the night cycle arrived, the station lights dimmed to a soft hum. Outside, the remnants of the storm floated like bruises in the sky. Inside, Jackson stared at the ceiling and wondered how one person could feel both so small and so essential at once. The next day began with alarms. He fell out of bed with an undignified yelp and hit the comms panel. "Is it the weather again? Because I've run out of socks and heroic speeches." Alaris's voice came through, cool and alert. "Not weather, visitors." That word was never comforting when spoken by someone with interstellar notoriety. He sprinted to the observation deck, skidding to a halt beside her. Outside, just beyond the shield, hovered a sleek craft, dark silver, with sharp curves and no visible markings. It emitted no signal, no ID, just presence. "Friends of yours?" Jackson asked. "Not anymore." The ship pulsed once, then again. "They're trying to scan us," she said. "Do we scan back?" "I block them. They will escalate." He looked at her. "Do I want to know what escalate means in this context?" She pressed a few commands. "They will attempt to retrieve me." "Retrieve? They consider me property." Jackson squinted. "You're not property. You're a snarky, terrifying miracle." "Tell them that. Perhaps they will leave." A long silence passed. The ship outside began to deploy spindly limbs, like metallic insects stretching after a nap. Jackson's bravado wilted slightly. "So, plan? I have one. Does it involve me dying?" "That is a variable." "Terrific." She walked toward the lower hangar. He followed because logic had long since lost its hold on him. Down in the depths of the station, Alaris opened a sealed crate Jackson had never seen before. Inside was something that looked suspiciously like a giant tuning fork mated with a flamethrower. "Please tell me that's a weapon." "It is an interface disruptor, technically non-lethal." "Technically?" "Depending on the species." He sighed. "Have I mentioned how much I enjoy our relaxing, uneventful days?" "Only during explosions." They returned topside as the enemy vessel lowered itself further, pressing into the atmosphere with aggressive elegance. A voice finally cracked through the comms, cold, metallic, and far too calm. "Subject designation EL7. Prepare for reabsorption." Jackson leaned into the mic. "She's not available. Please leave a message after the tone." A pause, then a hiss. They opened fire. The station shook like a drunk washing machine as the disruptor charged in Alaris's hands. Outside, the alien ship spread its limbs and sent tendrils of blue light scraping across the dome, searching for weaknesses or, at the very least, a decent Wi-Fi signal. Alarms blared with all the grace of a screaming toddler. Jackson, trying not to be reduced to decorative ash, had just enough time to strap himself into the nearest wall chair and yell something deeply brave and masculine like, "Please don't let me explode." Alaris stood calmly in front of the viewport, the disruptor braced against her shoulder, her long ears flicking slightly as she calibrated the weapon's oscillation. She looked less like a woman preparing for battle and more like someone about to play a particularly aggressive symphony. "They are scanning for structural weaknesses," she said. "Oh, good," Jackson muttered. "Maybe they will find my self-esteem." The first impact came with the sound of metal shrieking. The second tore a gash along the outer corridor. The ship wanted in, and it was done asking nicely. "You sure this thing only disrupts?" he asked, eyeing the glowing coils of her weapon. "Disruption is a flexible term." "You know what else is a flexible term? Lawsuits and spinal columns." Alaris ignored him, stepped forward and opened a direct channel. Her voice went out like thunder. "Disengage. You will not take me." A pause followed by static, then a voice. Calculated, male, clipped like a bureaucrat's sigh. "You are property of the Axis Vault. Return or face dismantlement." "You can't dismantle people," Jackson snapped, hopping out of the chair and running to the backup terminal. "Well, you can, but it's rude, and also illegal in several star systems, including ours." We own her, the voice said. No, you built her, Jackson replied. But she made herself. The ship didn't answer. Instead, it deployed a boarding pod that sliced through the shield like a scalpel. Ellerise raised the disruptor. Jackson winced. The moment the pod breached, she fired. A shock wave tore across the air like a scream made of static and broken physics. The intruding beam stuttered, folded inward, and with a crack like glass giving up, imploded into a cluster of smoke and sparking debris. Did you just fold reality? Jackson asked. A small corner. Do I still have bones? She looked him over. Most of them. The ship reeled, literally. It pulled back, shuddering like it had been slapped by a cosmic parent. Alaris walked toward the console and rerouted the station's remaining power into a tight transmission beam. Then she said, Jackson, when I tell you, open channel 3. Not before. Why? Because I'm going to say something I can't unsay. He watched her, this strange, luminous being who was once only a story meant to frighten children or rally troops. She looked back at him, no longer untouchable, no longer weapon or symbol, just a person, scared and furious and tired of being a myth. She raised the mic. You want me? She said to the ship. Then hear me. Jackson hit channel 3. Elleris spoke in a language older than the stars, a harmonic thread woven into the architecture of the Axis Vault itself. It wasn't speech. It was code, raw and unfiltered, broadcast like a beacon. For one blinding second, the ship paused. Its lights flickered, its tendrils sagged. Then came the silence, and then it turned. The vessel reversed, slowly, as if rethinking its entire life plan. One final pulse echoed from it, less a threat, more a query, and then it was gone, vanishing into the clouds like a retreating thought. Jackson slumped against the console. Did you just tell them to leave you alone in your ancient murder language? I told them I was no longer theirs, Alaris replied. I told them I had chosen, and that I was not coming back. He blinked at her. And they listened? I included schematics of what I'd do if they didn't. Ah, the universal language. Don't test me. She powered down the disruptor and walked toward the center of the room. It is done, Jackson followed. So, what now? Do we just resume normal station duties? Run inventory? Play cards? I do not know. He looked at her carefully. Do you know who you are now? She thought for a moment. Less than before, but I think that's good. Uncertainty builds character, he said, and possibly ulcers. They moved through the damaged halls, past scarred metal and flickering lights. Repairs could wait. The silence wasn't threatening anymore. It was a kind of peace. Jackson offered her a seat in the lounge, then handed her the last surviving packet of coffee substitute, which she accepted with the ceremonial disdain of someone who knew exactly how bad it would taste. He sat beside her. So, Alaris, alien storm lady, former weapon, current roommate, what do you want to do now? She tilted her head. I want to watch the sunrise. That's it? For now. They sat like that as the world outside shifted. The last tendrils of the failed storm drifted away, and the light crept across the broken land like forgiveness. Alaris leaned back, her long ears twitching slightly in the warmth, and Jackson, for once, didn't say anything. But after a moment, she did. You never answered my question. He looked over. Which one? When I first arrived, when I asked why you weren't afraid of me. He smiled, small and sincere. Because you looked at me like you didn't want to be feared. And I figured, maybe you just needed someone who didn't. She blinked slowly. That is inefficient logic. Welcome to humanity. He bumped her shoulder with his, careful and light. You're one of us now. Hope you're ready to be disappointed and undercaffeinated. She gave a soft laugh, almost a glitch in the melody of the room. I think I'm ready. They watched the sun rise on a world that had learned to breathe again.